All right, let's talk about this. Um, the Kyrie Irving situation. Honestly, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't have all the facts, granted, but based on everything that I'm seeing, reading very quickly and such, dude's basically supporting a movie that, or promoting a movie that pretty much supports anti-Semitism. So the question comes down to is the NBA, the league NBA itself, the NBA itself, as well as the team, the New Jersey Nets, as well as NBA players. It's a matter of no one condemning him for what he did or said. Um, the NBA fining him or suspending him now, it's as Charles Barkley had said, I think maybe yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. Um, he's right. The NBA, like, if they were to suspend him now or fine him, um, they're too late. They're essentially too late. It's not a case of it's not a case of the fact that they're too late in the aspect of taking action. It's more of a case where they're too late because it's more of a reactionary aspect of peer pressure and public outcry. That's what it is. They didn't bother to do this until there was a public outcry and peer public outcry about this. Um, and what's even more weird is the fact is that I don't think we've seen any NBA current NBA players. Not that I've seen or read, because honestly, I don't follow NBA players. I was just based on the news, ESPN, TNT, and NBA on TNT, etc. No current NBA player is condemning Kyrie Irving publicly. Privately, possibly, but in reality, they should be doing this publicly too. Honestly, to be quite honest, I mean, it's a case where what Kyrie Irving is doing, or saying, said, tweeted out essentially, um, it shouldn't have happened. Um, it's not something that I believe the that the NBA players shouldn't stay away from. It's because of the fact is like essentially. Well, let me turn back a little bit from from that statement actually, because it's really what it is like the NBA players, they're not publicly doing anything. But yeah, when you had the issue with Don Sterling and Starkin, I forgot the Phoenix owner. Um, essentially, what they did, the NBA players pretty much banded together as a community and said, "Hey, you got to get, he's got to go, or they got to go." Um, Same thing with the BLM movement. Now, granted, the BLM movement is good and all that stuff. The players seeing all the stuff that was going on with, especially with George Floyd, they banded together, said this is not right. Boom, perfect. That's great. But now if it's one of their own or their fraternity in this fraternity of athletes, um, they choose to stay quiet. Where's the hypocrisy in that? Where is the hypocrisy? Um, Now the real question I got to find. Now the real question I want answered is it's not the fact of the hypocrisy of the fact that it's a fraternity where they don't say anything publicly and condemning and such, but it's more of the hypocrisy of like, all right, this is a black man, um, essentially supporting, promoting a movie um, that was pretty much supporting anti-Semitism. Um, had this been a white guy promoting a movie supporting the South, apartheid, or anything of that nature, would these players publicly come out and say something as a result of that? And I have a feeling they would absolutely come out and say, this guy's got to get out. We are not playing with him. He's got to go. Players on his own team would say, no, he's got to go, etc. Uh, for that matter, if there was any derogatory aspects towards women, for that matter, um, would the players say anything at that point? Honestly, I think there would not be. I think it's a big hypocrisy in this situation, and it'd be interesting to see Um, if there was a case where, like, some players, what they did to women, they're like, the fact that, I mean, rest of so, like, the Kobe Bryant issue, um, even though he was found, I mean, well, actually, it was alleged. We don't know if it's true or not, but in reality, a lot of the players stayed away from, and, like, of course, Kobe shifted onto them at that point. But in reality, like, like, if a player does something along those lines, crosses that line, will the players actually support him, or will they basically, like, admonish him and, like, condemn him, like, hey, he's got to go? I doubt they wouldn't. I doubt they wouldn't, unless it happened to, one of their own, essentially at that point. Same thing with the owners. If the owners had done something of that nature to women, I don't think these players would say anything. But when it comes to race, whoosh, let's stand up and say no. But if the question is, if this was a black owner, if it was a black owner, the question is, would these players have done the exact same thing what they did with Sterling and Starkin? I forgot the Suns owner at the time. Would they have done the exact same thing? I want to say they would. I want to say they would, but in reality, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. Because based on all the stuff that I'm seeing right now, where the players are not standing out and saying something against Kyrie Irving publicly, it's I think it's a double standard and hypocrisy. And I think it's in the same situation for all the professional sports, football, basketball, baseball, and hockey for that matter too. Now, tennis, you definitely see all tennis players, like, go all out against that person. Same thing with, most likely, golf. Well, actually, it's hard to say with golf, but definitely for sure tennis. They at least would all stand up and, like, because it's an individual, kind of pretty much an individual sport, so they will actually say it. No. Golf, you would think so, but I don't think so, honestly. NASCAR or racing in general, I don't know. Honestly, you've heard stories. I've heard stories. I don't know if it's true or not, and I don't know, like, but sometimes they do stand out and say something at that point. But in reality, I don't know what they do, because, like, in reality, like, you got these owners and such. The racers want to play, want to race. So who knows? But again, the big four basically in the U.S. basketball, baseball, football, specifically those three, as well as hockey. I mean, I don't know. I mean, honestly, honestly, the Ray Rice issue, domestic abuse. Oh yeah, the NFL jumped in. Great, perfect. Players, did they say anything? No, none of them stood up. And now, granted, for those that are in that aspect of, sorry, for those that are in that aspect of, I can't say anything because I got to look myself in the mirror and say it. So I can't say it because look in the mirror, I'm pretty much the same thing. So I understand they can't say much. But for those that haven't done anything like that, they could stand up and say something about it. So in this situation, if there's, like, some it's more of a case where, like, players, in an idyllic world, utopian idyllic world, no one would see race, color, creed, orientation, religion to the aspect of, like, from that biasness. It's just basically, look, you're a dude, you're a person, to be what you want to be, and that's it. But in reality, that's not the world we live in. I think it's going to be another 5 or 6 generations before we finally see 7 generations. I'm sorry, 7 generations at least. I'd like to see it within 2, but 7 generations I could see, where I don't think anyone will care too much about this stuff. I think it's more of a case of, like, we'll probably be worried too much about, like, our own lives at that point. Like, worried about will we survive or anything for that matter, or at least place more involved into space exploration. It's a tough sell to say, to be quite honest. I don't know what to say or do, to be honest. This is a tough topic to say, and I want to say, I think there's more of a double standard / hypocrisy about this aspect of why the players are not saying anything about Kyrie. It's more of a case where, because of the fact that they were in the fraternity themselves and they don't want to say anything at that point, and they're trying to stand up. But in reality, you can't do that. If you can't have the double standard of doing that against the owners, but yet you're, as a player, sports are supposed to bring the community together. You guys are creating division right now at this point as well too. And now and the best part is, like, you got these former players from old school players. I mean, I don't want to say old school, but former players of, the 90s and early 2000s, but more specifically in the 90s, at least they're coming out in public saying, look, this, what the hell are you doing? And they're calling, pretty much Kyrie Irving an idiot for that man. And now they got to defend themselves as well as all the other players and the NBA itself for that, the fact that like we're not associative and such. And it's, I think this was a case also in the, if this had happened, let's say in the 90s and late 80s, I think the players would have said something and done something about that. But the reality, players themselves would not publicly say anything about this. They try to stay away from some of these subjects. I mean, granted, they had the opportunity to step up a little bit when it came to race relations. I think it was more of a case where they didn't want to rock the boat back then. And it made sense at that time because people saw them as athletes. They said, stay in your lane. Don't come into, we don't need political commentary from athletes, honestly. But in reality, I think now it's more of a case like you have to make commentary about anything and everything. And now people might say, oh, well, wait, hold on. Kyrie can't, like Kyrie is like, exercising his right of freedom of speech. Okay, if he was promoting Mein Kampf, what would you say about that? Or for that matter, I don't know anything that's some book that promotes slavery outside of Mein Kampf. I should actually research into that. But anyways, like let's say there's a white dude, white dude or whatever, like promotes some sort of book as well too. Actually, yeah, if a white player basically supporting, like promoted Mein Kampf, all the NBA players would like say, nope, won't play with them if they're on the same court. So I think that situation is more of a case where like it's a fraternity within the athletic world that we've seen. They won't say much, but they should. Now the question is, are they, when they speak out against it, are they creating a double standard against themselves from what they're doing? You know what? If that's the case, then that's the only reason why I can think of why these players are not saying anything at this point. Because it's a case where, like, if they're not saying anything, it's more of a case because then they're thinking of themselves as a double standard. Like, hey, wait, I'm also guilty of this as well too, and I can't speak out against it. By them staying silent like that, I've got to assume that at that point then too. So if that's the case, we got a bigger problem than at that point. So honestly, I think the NBA's got a lot of repair damage that they've got to do at this point right now too. I mean, the whole situation with the Celtics coach, I forgot his name now, that was suspended for a year. I mean, that was something where players didn't say much because no one could say anything because it was a case where, like, no one knew. No one knows exactly what happened. All we know is there was inappropriate behavior or relations within the Celtics organization, and that's why the NBA did not fine the coach, because there was no criminal criminal report filed as a result. So I think that's why the NBA didn't get involved. If there was some aspect of it, I think then the NBA would have got involved. In this situation right now with Kyrie Irving, this is more of a case where, like, I think he's trying to do what a Kanye did, basically, to the point where, like, hey, he wants the news on him. And to be honest, I think people should be tired of this. I think people should be tired of Kyrie Irving. I mean, like, he's a good player. He's a great player. But if he's going to keep doing stuff like this, first off, he's no Charles Barkley, to be quite honest. Like, now, Charles was very vocal about a lot of things. But honestly, Charles had earned that rep. And the other aspect was Charles also was not a person that was, Charles Barkley was not a person of that nature to be biased or anything like that. Honestly, he was a selfish guy. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Selfish guy that all cared about it was himself and, like, how does it affect him? And that's the other aspect I think people should realize is, like, you know what? Why should you care about a person's color, creed, or whatever it may be, color, creed, religion, etc.? Basically, it's more of a case where, like, how does it affect you directly? Does it affect you? If it doesn't, then why do you care? Why do you care if it doesn't affect you directly, honestly, right? I mean, now, if it doesn't hurt anyone, yes. Now that's something you should jump into at that point too, right? But in reality, it's basically the sports world has a reputation that they got to rebuild. Basically, they got to rebuild their brand. Re-educating people is not going to do anything because, like, you know what, these players it's just like drug rehab. You just go and then, like, for the PR aspect, but in reality, you're not going to care. unless there's some drastic life altering event that will cause it, they're not going to change. I'm seeing I'm past the 15 minutes, so in this case, I'm gonna have to sign up. I think this is one of the ones where I've been actually gone a little bit longer than usual. But anyway, this is like a really touchy subject, and honestly, it's something I don't understand. I mean, it's the same thing with the whole Brett Favre situation. No one, it wasn't as brought up as a big deal as it was, than it should have been. You know, Brett Favre stealing from the poor, basically. But that's in the that's not in the past, but it's more of like that's something that other people have already talked about. I don't think I should talk about it now at this point. Honestly, the dude, I don't know. Can you kick people out of the Hall of Fame for basketball, football, and baseball, or and the hockey? Can that be done? I think people should. That should be an option in there, where you can revoke names. I mean, hell, we're doing that with like statues, our history of statues. So why can't we do it here as well too? So in that situation, I say give the opportunity of like, hey, look, just because you're a good person during your playing days, if you're a horrible person once you're done in your Hall of Fame, no, we should like revoke you from the Hall of Fame from whatever sport it may be. Um, okay. Anyways, unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed, as you can see. Signing off.